Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys and the Sounds in Cinema podcast.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is an Oceans edition. Today, we talk Oceans 13, the top of Tom's list. From the bottom to the top. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, you heard his name once already, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hi, Tom.
Screw Sinatra's hand.
That's a good Pacino.
This is why I did that very quotable, because as described by Alec Baldwin on an episode of Conan, there are three vocal ages of Al Pacino. The first is the Serpico era, with the inimitable "You and me are gonna go for a little ride."
Yeah,
and
right.
Then obviously you've got this scent of a woman. Hoo-ha!
That's the breaking point, right? Like the scent of a woman is a breaking point.
Hoo-ha! I'm blind. Give me an Oscar. Hoo-ha! And then Baldwin directed attention to his late Southern gentleman period, where he was commenting on the Godfather reunion on Facebook Live, where he'd sort of turned into Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah,
briefly. Right. I do declare, oh my, I will. But I think I've detected a kind of mini age between 2 and 3, which is where Ocean's 13
This
falls.
is where it sits, yeah.
And I'm going to call it Sylvester the Cat, because it's high and it's raspy and it's lispy. He spends a lot of this movie licking his lips and lisping, and I was taken aback because I expected full on scent of a woman hoo-ha, and what I got was suffering succotash.
Well, you've already mentioned it. You said in the ranking episode that there is a performance that you quite like in this movie. Maybe that's the reason alone that it's at the top of your list. But you also said this is the movie you have the fewest problems with. But, I mean, right at the outset, I do want to bring up that it's funny that we are in an age, including when this movie was made, 2007, an age of Pacino, where I think it's possible that having Pacino in your movie might be a liability as much as it is a strength, 100%. Right?
It's a definite liability. I mean, he himself is an acting liability at this point. I mean, if you take a step back and you think about it, he's so off his game that he waits for a colorful caper movie to show restraint.
Right. Yeah, right.
Put him in a movie like Heat, which is kind of asking, in a role that's asking to be underplayed.
Right.
And he plays it like by his own admission, like he's a cocaine addict. That's what he was going for some reason, even though the character was not. So that's how off his game he is. He's completely misread the tone of this movie. If he hammed his way through this movie, no one would bat an eye. And yet, this is where he decides suddenly he wants to kind of bring it down and do a grounded performance.
I know.
He's playing the villain of the piece as well.
Yeah. One thing that really struck me was at the end of this movie, in his last moments on screen, we're still learning shit about him.
Yeah.
He talks about how he's a 3 handicap on the golf course. And you realize, like, the performance is so grounded that that's really important to the character.
Yeah. And I'm even gonna go a step forward, and this was my revelation from watching Pacino in this movie. I think the character he plays in Ocean's 13 is a better update of Michael Corleone than the update of Michael Corleone he played in Godfather 3.
The third
In
part.
every regard. The hair, the look, the acting, the characterization.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, this is, you know, in every respect, this is what Michael Corleone would have turned into, not the kind
Sure.
of, you know, screaming, shouting, diabetic.
Well, we all have plenty of more to say. That's the end of Pacino Corner for now. But ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Ocean's 13, a 2007 film, once again directed by Steven Soderbergh. We've talked about his career at length already, so no need to update. But this movie ups, Tom, 70% on Rotten Tomatoes. So this is a more well-liked, I think, critically and from audiences than its predecessor. And on a budget of $85 million, which, by the way, 2007, small budget for all these A-list actors and for all the shit and shenanigans that they're putting in this movie. That's kind of impressive. $85 million. Opening weekend of $36.1 million. But in the USA, only $117.1 million. And then in the world kicks in again, really helps out. $311.3 million in the world. But you can see that, you know, despite the fact that audiences and critics like this movie more, based on its budget and compared to how much money the two movies that came before it made, it felt like there was fatigue in the air, you know? We were, like, audiences were kind of done.
And also, you know, you get that deferred punishment, you know, because, you know, Ocean's 12 had such a bad critical reaction.
Yeah, and that might have something to do with it, right?
That people don't go to see this.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you know, the beef is with Ocean's 12, not this movie.
Right.
But you can't tell audiences don't work that way. If they're put off by a movie, then they're put off with whatever the next movie's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a combination of both. But certainly, I mean, yeah, I feel the same. Like, what could they possibly do in a third version of this formula? Like, where can they go? And they do what the you know, trilogies usually do, which is they loop right back to the original. And it, you know, I've not yet seen the original, but
you will
even
soon.
even I can tell that it's looping back to whatever the original recipe was.
Okay, yeah, that's evident.
Oh, completely. And I don't know if I'm just reading it through every other third in the trilogy we've ever done, which does that. But it kind of the dynamics.
Not Superman 3. Dramatic left turn.
Yeah, that is very true. Yeah, and that's why it's worth mentioning when a movie doesn't do that. Yeah, no, it's completely evident. I can see all the surrogacies and you know, I think they even make reference to them, kind of treading kind of an old path, like treading an original path at certain time. Isn't that Andy Garcia's whole point? He's like he's in the movie sort of going, you've done this already. You need to do something different. So it was evident.
Well, and you know, this movie fully embraces things that you don't know about yet because you haven't taken the fucking time to see the Ocean's 11.
Well,
but when
long.
we get there,
like
this movie embraces things that movie dismisses immediately in the, you know, first 20 minutes as an impossibility. And that's one of the things that kind of ticked against this movie when I first saw it and on the rewatch. But we'll get there. You know, we open with...
How very sequel.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Everything we dismissed as an impossibility is now very much a possibility.
It's so very possible now.
And the only place we can go.
Well, we open with some old school music, a lot of color, and an opening titles that kind of looks. I think I mentioned this in maybe the last episode, but it feels like, jazzy Rat Pack Psycho
Yeah.
logos with Warner Brothers and the Village Roadshow logos, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
they're almost like so retro styled. They look like 1970s theater ads.
Mm-hmm.
Like I expected suddenly like a popcorn would come to life and start singing "Let's all go to the lobby." I know that's Mr. Burns, but that's how I learnt about that advertisement. So I'm always gonna do Mr. Burns.
Well, it's on topic for us.
Yeah.
we got it's the show we reference and apparently part of the trap that Matthew Aldrich set for us.
But what's kind of I don't know, strange and disappointing about it is the hard cut to the 2007 film look.
Mm.
Like when you come out of the gates that retro styled, I feel like the film has to follow that path. I feel like it's a little bit of a cheat.
I think they still think
kind
that
of
yeah. To me, it seems as though Soderbergh is saying that this is that color scheme, that music, that style is here in this movie in spirit.
Yeah.
Not the look of it, but in spirit. But that's
No,
how all these movies
yeah.
feel,
But when it begins like that, you expect something on the level of Grindhouse, right? You something that I guess it's good that they didn't, or they would have made even less money. But
like, it's not going to be as dark as the Friends of Eddie Coyle, but it feels like it's going for something like that.
Yeah, it's not Gordon Willett. Well, that's my next note is too damn dark.
Okay.
It's like these movies have been made for so long they've gone from the overlit to underlit. Like they've ridden a whole industry wave of lighting in the time that these movies have been released.
Yeah.
And I guess it seems to begin in the middle of a heist, but that's a fake out. Like, well, it does begin in the middle of a heist, but the heist itself is not important.
No, right.
It's just where we're finding our characters. So it's a little bit of a fake out.
I wrote down that Brad Pitt is breaking in the coldest of cold opens.
Yes, cold open heist fake out, which is kind of an impasse in itself because it's sort of an inversion. It's like, oh, we're starting with the heist this time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also the series convention of putting a fake heist in different parts of the movie. So in the last movie, we had the bait and switch daytime heist, which never happened, or it happened in a very different way. Eventually, and here we've got a immediate fake out. So it's a bit of a messy opening, I think.
I don't know, I get what you're saying, but I also think it has to do, I think it at least lends itself towards character, because, again, you don't know this, but there's a very similar looking heist in the first movie.
Okay.
For one, and then two, when you see that Brad Pitt is at the precipice of getting into this vault, but once he hears that Ruben is down,
yeah,
everything's, I'm laying down my tools, and he just says I gotta go, and he walks out. So at the very least, it says something about the team, how they feel about each other, what they mean to each other, and
yeah,
I'm okay with that.
Does the emotion connect for you? Like the gang seem to be connected emotionally in a way they never seem to be, at least in the last movie.
Yeah.
I got the sense from the last movie they were bound together financially only, and this movie wants us to think that literally what you just said, that he would down tools in the middle of a heist to.
It's a little bit different in terms of Danny and Rusty and Ruben, because they,
Yeah.
You'll get more backstory once you see the first movie. But they all knew each other before.
I see.
And it's like, Danny and Rusty, they all knew these guys, but like for the first heist, they bring them all together. They're all kind of meeting each other for the first time.
Okay.
But then I can also make the argument that over the course of, like, yes, they were brought together for the first movie, then circumstances brought them together for the second movie. And despite the fact that, like, Rusty's doing this heist, they might have their own things going on here, there, and everywhere, but if there was the one single job that takes, the multiple cons and blah, 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 this is the team they'd have together. And over the course of those two movies, it brought the team together in a different way, possibly.
I mean, it's a good device, I think.
Yeah.
It's a shame that Elliot Gould has lost a lot of weight and looks in better shape than he did in the previous two movies. But it's a good device to get them all together, because it's really all that's left in terms of the sort of reunion ploy.
Yes.
And it's as I understand it, and I don't say I understood everything about this movie, but they're trying to invoke bankruptcy rather than steal anything from the casino, at least at first. That there's not a traditional heist that they're embarking on.
No, I think it's more...
They're trying to ruin his casino.
Yeah, they want to ruin him specifically, but yeah, they want to make some money while they do it. And the circumstances of the hotel, as we find out early on as they start talking to Eddie Izzard, is that they're stuck. Like, they don't know how to get a lot of money out of this casino.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, yeah, anyway. But we also, in this cold open, I believe we also get Ruben talking with Danny, and then Danny's doing a flashback, and...
Yeah. We flash back before anything happens in the present, which is another example of how Christopher Nolan ruined cinema. We can't have linear chronology anymore. We're not allowed.
Yeah, it's not interesting.
I guess in context I would also blame Lost. That was another tipping point where we stopped telling stories in order.
Sure.
In popular culture. So yeah, and we flash back to basically the reason for Ruben's heart attack is that he was kind of screwed out of a joint casino venture, which was eventually he was basically, this is to me a reenactment of the scene between Michael Corleone and Mo Green in the first Godfather movie.
Yeah, it feels like that,
and
doesn't it?
I think they know it.
I do too, yeah. It felt... Yeah.
As well as, obviously any reference back to that also brings in the original Ocean's 11 movie, because not that The Godfather's being made in 1960, but it's set around that time in Vegas. So you can make those connections, I think, cognitively when you're kind of watching it between the original plus The Godfather. So it's a kind of and of course they this is where they mention Sinatra. That you shook Sinatra's hand, screwed Sinatra's hand.
Right.
It's a sort of the first, I don't know. Well, having not seen the first movie, I don't know, but it seems like the first open acknowledgement of the heritage of the series, that it began there.
Right, and I think because the story originated with the Rat Pack and because of Frank Sinatra. I think I remember reading that they were hesitant to, in the first two movies, to bring him up because of that meta quality. But by the time you get to the third one, I think everybody goes, well, who gives a shit? And so they're okay mentioning it. Mm-hmm. But it's also, because this is where they mentioned the Billy Martin. And I think more than any of the other movies that, they have all these clever... They have all these clever turns of phrases for different cons and, like, what you need. Like, again, you'll see it in the first movie when Rusty explains all the things that they'll need. But, if you have a little bit of knowledge, it goes a long way in this movie that I think's kind of fun. If you know that Irwin Allen is the guy who produced things like The Towering Inferno, like these kind of movies. So later on when Matt Damon is saying he's doing the Irwin Allen, which is him bringing in the Geiger counter as a camera for the earthquake shit. And Billy Martin was this manager for the Yankees who was a great manager and got them a couple World Series, but was also a raging alcoholic and a real asshole. So he got fired several times and then hired back by Steinbrenner, and so those
now
references.
I get why you like these movies. These movies are the only people who understand your references.
Yeah, exactly.
I literally,
fun.
I agree. Yeah, literally only know Billy Martin from Larry David Steinbrenner and Seinfeld.
Yeah, right.
And he's just naming managers, and he keeps saying Billy Martin. And he just goes around the houses and back to Billy Martin. Is it possible Don Cheadle's accent is getting worse?
Oh, sure.
Because he seems to, in this movie, he seems to be trying to merge it with his own accent. I don't know if he was like playing a long game where if they got another movie, it would be indistinguishable from his own voice.
Right.
But part of me feels like he's given up.
I can tell you this, that based on these 3 movies, I think I mentioned in our ranking episode that he was on, some podcast recently, Smartless or something, and so he was talking about the one lesson he learned from these movies, and I think it was Bateman that said, "Don't ever do an accent again." He goes, "That's right."
Well, he seems to have kind of is slowly learning that lesson, and was kind of hoping to sort of disappear that accent over the course of at least this movie.
I was surprised. I was surprised in our last episode that you said, I just won't even mention the accent. I thought you'd have so much to say about his shitty accent.
Well, there's nothing really to say about it. I mean, I'm more offended that he backs away from it, I suppose.
Right.
Having gone so far down the road,
Yeah.
I feel like you've kind of got to you've got to commit to the bit. And this movie feels like he realizes how weak the bit is, and he still wants to be in the movie.
He wants out.
Yeah, but he's in too deep when it comes to the accent.
Right.
So we're about 10 minutes into the movie, and then Eddie Izzard is found in a series of establishing shots.
Right.
They got away with having Pacino in your movie and it not being a disaster, but they're really rolling the dice now when it comes to having Eddie Izzard back.
Yeah, it seems interesting to me that, like, device-wise, this is usually the time that we catch up with the team, and instead they're using essentially the same trick, except instead of going scene by scene, catching up with the people, we're going scene by scene to figure out how they're stuck and why they're, in a real problem trying to get into this casino and rob it. And all of that's just for Eddie Izzard, just to catch him up narratively. Yes,
that's true. Yeah. That's true. At least they're doing it differently. To add to the sort of, the nostalgia for Vegas of old and the original movie, the story about the flamingo is obviously, pitched at. This movie seems, I think it bears out what you're saying. They seem to be more comfortable at this point talking about old Vegas and the era in which the original movie was made.
Sure.
And then Al Pacino screams at a housekeeper, and this is the point where I was like, "Oh, I may have spoken too soon about his restraint." But then I second guessed myself and I said, "Actually, no. It's shouting in context." When was the last time we saw Al Pacino shouting in context in a movie?
Exactly.
I mean, he was always a shouter, but Dog Day Afternoon, Godfather 2, it was always it was in context. It was a choice.
Right.
And this also feels like a choice. So at this point, I'm just everything I thought I knew about Pacino's gone completely out of the window.
Well, I do think it's funny because as we're going through all of this and we're learning whatever it is we're learning, we're talking about how the Affleck team has to go to a Mexican factory for the dice, and we're learning about. Like Livingston having to do card shit and, but finally we get to this AI computer.
Well, before that, and that's I definitely want to talk about that. I don't want to skip over this Mexican factory. What is it about the Afflecks pretending to be Latino?
I don't know.
Did that family have a fetish for that kind of stuff? That's what I'm starting to think. And at some point, I don't know what the order is. Did Argo come before this, or was Argo after this? Before
Argo's after this by like
Argo's...
5 years.
Oh,
that's
really?
2012. Yeah.
Because I assumed it was Casey making fun of Ben.
No, yeah, no.
When he's leaning into the... Wow. So Casey did it first. Well, there's precedent for that in other issues too.
Sure.
But yeah, both of them are kind of around this period doing unashamed brownface performances. And yeah,
at least the guy, I from what I understand, what's his name? Tony Mendez? Is it Mendez? The guy he plays in Argo?
Yes.
Whatever his name is, the real guy was like, "No, I love it. I'm fine with it. I'm very light skinned." Blah blah. Like he had this whole thing where he was like, "No, I'm good with it. I don't care."
Sounds like an Uncle Tomas right there.
Yeah.
And then right before we get to the AI and again, just one more thing.
Yeah.
This character Eugene that Danny finds. I made the note that it's like, I don't know who this actor is, but obviously Jason Schwartzman, Michael Cera, and Jesse Eisenberg were all too busy.
Oh, that's
and
good.
Then speaking of Seinfeld, the guy is he one of the dealers or he's a floor manager?
Yeah, that guy who's stealing the silverware.
The guy, yeah, he's the guy who challenges
to the race.
Jerry Seinfeld to a race. Yeah.
Yeah.
I choose not to run. And they have him and George Clooney have a little 90s TV reunion. It's a nice, it's a nice moment. And I was so sure that he would have been in ER at some point, that guy, because he's been in literally everything else.
He's in everything. Yeah, absolutely.
But ER is the one show he has not done.
Oh, wow.
So it didn't quite work as perfectly as I was hoping for it to. But still, he's still the race guy.
Yeah.
Duncan.
Well, so when we get to the Greco,
yes,
what we're finding out is that at first I never could decide if I respect the movie for this or if, because it felt like they wrote themselves into a hole, right? It was like,
with an all-seeing security system.
Yeah, this all-seeing security system that knows if you're lying, if your reactions, like measuring the pupils and that sort of shit, to know if your reaction is genuine. And so it makes you think, okay, so they can't get any money out of there. So what the fuck are they gonna do? But they do come up with a plan. So, and the only other thing is that it feels akin to the first movie, but is different. And so they're laying a lot of tracks that they already did once, but admittedly in a different way. But it does feel like a retread. That's why, although this movie feels homey to me, it also feels like it's been done.
Lazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a fine line between homey and lazy, and this movie definitely tries that. But they historically they backed the right horse, making this all about AI.
Yeah, totally.
Because it means that this plot device has dated better than you would have ever imagined it would if you'd have seen it at the time. Because at the time, they'd be like, this is science fiction. We've gone into the world of science fiction. Now we watch it and we go, no, this technology evolved exactly as it's presented here.
It is the current plot of the Mission Impossible movies.
Really? Yeah.
The Dead Reckonings. Like that's an evil AI movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So it's probably luck more than anything else, but it doesn't seem far-fetched watching it in 2024.
Yeah. No, not at all.
At least the technological part of it. Although I did, I got a little bit tearful seeing Julian Sands in those scenes as well.
Yeah, I know. It's a bummer.
It is a bummer.
And I'm a hiker, as you know, so
yeah, that
gotta be careful.
Must have an extra significance to you. It's interesting though. I guess what I'm starting to realize in looking through my notes is kind of one of the overall problems I had in the movie, that it was telling me that there was an emotional reason that this story was happening, but I didn't see it from any of the characters. Like, they seemed blanker than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a disconnect I could never really
Get over.
past. Yeah.
Yeah.
That they were like even more perfunctory in the way that they were doing this, in the way that they were going about the job. And I'm not saying I wanted it to be melodramatic, but I wanted there to be a halfway house where it felt like...
I think they are. They have those moments where Danny's talking to Rusty and he's, they're talking about how, remembrance of times past, and Rusty's saying that.
But I think that's a poor
Reuben caught me doing this,
emotion.
and he,
Yeah,
what's that?
I think that's a poor substitute. That scene feels...
No, I
really
agree. I think that's what they think is enough.
That's why.
But you're not seeing it from anybody else on the team, and
no.
Matt Damon is having a hard time reading letters to him for some reason. I guess I don't know.
Yeah,
it's like too much of a front to his masculinity. Basher would love to be reading him those notes, but he's working on the digging machine.
Yeah. But that's it. That's the problem. Is it's all done by proxy.
Yeah.
It's like emotion by proxy, and it feels like the storytelling and the kind of the drama are working against each other rather than... And we know from a bunch of really good noir movies that you don't have to sacrifice raw emotion when you're doing a heist story. Those two things can totally work together. And I rewatched The Asphalt Jungle the other day, and that's a very technical movie, but everyone's emotions are there in everything they do. Nobody particularly talks about it, but just the filmmaking alludes to how the intensity of emotion that everyone's feeling at any given moment.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I really think it is. I think that by the time we've gotten to the third movie, and we already have talked about how really these movies are an excuse for people that like each other and like working with each other to get together and have fun both on and off camera. And so by the time you're that comfortable with each other on screen, the movie becomes shallow.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I guess that was the pitfall of the original movie. The reputation of the original movie is exactly that. It was, what the Rat Pack did when they got together. Instead of doing a show, we'll do a movie.
Yeah, right.
So it's interesting that it's fallen back into that pattern, and maybe consciously so as well. Maybe they're trying to be the Rat Pack of its day.
Mm-hmm.
In that sense.
All right. Well, we've got a good start. Why don't we take a break and then we'll come right back? And I want to tell you about one of my big problems.
All right.
We'll start there. All right.
I have a feeling I know what it is.
Ooh.
I have a feeling it also might involve a Sea of Love reunion.
You haven't been... Oh, hang on. You haven't been on your guessing game, though. You were really wrong about that last one.
Well, there's so much...
You had a problem with the dancing laser field. I did not.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But there's so many flaws to choose from. I don't know where to start.
All right, everyone. We'll be right back right after this.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing the third in what was originally a trilogy. Ooh, I have a little update, by the way.
About?
I don't know if maybe about this series.
Oh, okay. That sounds like it's relevant to our discussion.
Yeah, well, I brought it up, so I may as well just say it now. In some of my research for pitching a sequel,
Yeah.
I discovered that apparently during his The Boys on the Boat tour, Clooney said that they've got another script. They might be making another one of these.
That's so interesting, because I have some comments about the way that Ocean 8 ended.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was specifically about ensuring that never happened.
Yeah.
There was a different way they could have gone that would have kept that open. So it's interesting, mind you. I mean, if you can do Ocean's 8 and just spin the series off that way, there's no reason you can't go back to the original formula. Like Bourne.
No, yeah, of course.
What was the latest Bourne film called? Was it Bourne? Just Jason Bourne, right?
Yeah, the one with Damon was just called Jason Bourne.
And then it was the Bourne Legacy was the
Bourne Legacy, yeah.
Was the one that didn't have him in.
The Jeremy Renner.
Jeremy Renner, that's it.
And starring my good friend David Wilson Barnes. In the Bourne Legacy. But he has a great moment with another actor. It's fucking fantastic. They're so good in that scene.
Excellent.
Moving on. Oh,
well, I guess not too much, because Matt Damon is in London, and we see him briefly in London, and I assume they grabbed him on the set of a Bourne movie to film.
They actually did. That is.
Yay!
Oh,
Guessing
wait.
game back on track. No, okay. Oh.
No, not for this film. No, wait, maybe I think it was for this film. Yeah, you're right.
Well, because he appears in London, and I'm just like, whoa, we've cut to a Bourne movie all of a sudden.
Yeah, I think it was. I know for one of the films, he was literally in London filming a Bourne movie, and they dragged him away and got the scene that they wanted for one of these movies.
That'd be the Bourne Ultimatum, then.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It has to be the Bourne Ultimatum, because it comes out the same year.
Yeah. Well, the Bourne Ultimatum the beginning is set in London. They go to King's Cross Station?
Mm-hmm.
No.
I think.
Yeah, King's Cross Station with Paddy Constantine as a scared journalist.
It's really great.
Yeah, it's good scene, good movie.
Good
I
shit.
used to live with Paul Greengrass's niece.
Well.
So, take that, you David Wilson Barnes. Not gonna one-up me there, sir. I've got tenuous connections to the world of celebrity coming out of my ass.
Me, not so much.
I don't know. You've because that time you were in LA, you did. I think you stocked up a lifetime of celebrity encounters. I think.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I've met a few. You are right.
Don't point at me. Oh, okay. You can point at me if you're saying you're right. Okay, great.
You know what's funny is that one thing that made me angry about this movie that I forgot until you said what you said wasn't the thing I was thinking of. But at the beginning of this movie, towards that cold open, you mentioned that this movie's misogynistic already in previous episodes. On the way out to commercial, it seemed to be like you were intimating that basically they try to make up for all of that by just putting Ellen Barkin in this movie.
For sure, yeah.
And saying that's enough.
And doing terrible things to her as well.
Yeah. For me, I mentioned that it seemed like You know, that first movie is about Danny Ocean trying to get his girl back. That second movie is about Rusty trying to find a path towards love with Catherine Zeta-Jones. And then they abandoned that completely for this movie, but it seemed like Linus, like it should have been his movie. Let's let Linus find love.
Oh yeah, that would have been a good way to go. Yeah,
it would have been a logical next step. But then on top of it, one of my discoveries in watching these back to back to back is that this trilogy of series or these trilogy of movies are this is Linus's story. He goes from being the complete novice to I'll see you when I see you at the end of this movie.
Yeah, sure.
But when he gets on that plane and the kind of trope that they come up with to just dismiss Julia Roberts and Catherine Zeta-Jones out of this movie is it's not their fight. And they say it twice to make sure the audience knows, oh no, they're not going to be in this movie. We don't have room for the women.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Ellen Barkin is the kind of whipping girl for all the misogynistic tendencies in this movie.
Yeah.
There's also a sense that they want to tell a very different story, one where women are far more dispensable, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't have a place for it.
Although what they're asking Ellen Barkin to do in this movie seems shitty and unfair, she's always great in everything she's doing, you know?
I know. That's it. It takes even more taking advantage, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Given she's going to put in a solid performance, whatever they asked her to do.
Yeah.
I tell you what I should have guessed you were going to say was...
You'll never guess, because it's in the first movie.
Oh, okay. How yellow these scenes are.
Yeah, you're right.
But...
lots of yellow and red in this movie.
The caveat is that I think that yellow is supposed to suggest hotel and casino lighting, which is fair.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that Sam Mendes got totally the wrong idea about the possibility.
Exactly.
In cinema, it's like once you get outside the casino, there's no place for yellow anymore.
Yeah, you're done. That is something that I noticed. But so let me tell you the thing that bothered me when I first saw this movie, because it just seemed like such a cheap out. When they discover that they got to get the Greco and that they're going to have to take down the Greco, and then, you know, Eddie Izzard's Roman says, yeah, you could do all of that, but if you don't get people out of the building, all of this for naught, because this is Las Vegas and they're going to lose their money back. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
So they have to figure out a way to get them out of the casino. And so they come up with this brilliant plan of this enormous fucking drill.
Yeah.
Slowly drilling for months and months and months. But in the very first one of the first scenes when the first scene when everybody's together in Ocean's 11, Yen is asking a question in Chinese. And he's, you come to find out through Rusty's answer, he's asking, why don't we just dig a tunnel at the casino? And he says, no, can't do that. There's sensors underneath the ground. It's like, you can't do that at all. And that very reasonable explanation as to why you can't dig a tunnel just totally ignored for this film.
Yeah.
And they go full broke. It's so much so that they have to break one drill and bring in another.
Yeah.
Thanks to Andy Garcia, It's the plot point of the movie. You have to have this fucking hole dug. It's very bothersome that they ignored their own movie.
Their own storytelling logic. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is very odd. Not quite on the level of Tessa's Julia Roberts, but Jerry Weintraub, the producer of the movie, plays the co-conspirator guy. So that's another meta nod to...
And he was in the last movie, too.
He was? Okay, I didn't notice him in that.
Yeah, he's the guy who was talking to the Night Fox, who accidentally...
Right. And he comes back too.
Mm-hmm.
Very soon after this, we see Vince Cassell as the Night Fox returns. You talking of your kind of homey feeling, I think a lot of that has to do with Carl Reiner's British play acting, which is a delight.
Yeah.
And not content with having done one of the best Elmore Leonard adaptations, we go into Get Shorty territory here. We've got
David
the dry
Paymer.
cleaner from Get Shorty,
Yeah.
David Paymer, in a very similar setup.
The VUP.
Except now he's a, yeah, he's a hotel critic, but very similar kind of imagery and with the same actor.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting diversion.
I also think he's so funny in this movie because you can imagine David Paymer coming into this situation, and basically most of the shit he has to do alone. He's by himself in his room, you know? And
that's why those scenes in Get Shorty work so well.
Yeah, being separated from the
Same
fun
deal.
group and that kind of thing, you know, all by his lonesome in this movie. And he's just doing God's work as this character actor, killing it.
Yeah.
As a person like you said who's just a hotel critic.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, I think I'm really, again, as with all of Ocean's 8, I'm really glad that they cast who they cast.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's hard to imagine these movies without those acting turns.
Now, putting aside the brown face element of it,
which is hard to do
for a moment.
Go on, yes. Yeah.
I really do like this diversion at the factory. I like that these two idiot brothers can't get their shit together enough to just focus on getting the dice they need because they care about these guys they're working with. I think that's very funny.
But it's not just them. But it's not just them. It's like everyone who goes to solve the problem ends up being part of the strike.
Right.
But it only occurred to me halfway through this runner that it's essentially a comedic version of what happens in Shay.
Yes.
So, you know, going, and I don't know how I don't know how I feel about that. There's part of me that feels like, you know, you're trivializing serious subject matter.
Sure.
And then there's the other part of me which like this is what auteurs do, right? They can have the same material in their movie done with wildly different tones.
Drastically different, right.
That's what Howard Hawks used to do. You know, his Scarface and his Good Friday, essentially the same movie. One is drama, one is comedy.
Right.
So I don't know how I feel about it, but it's just crazy that we've just done Shay, and the storyline is straight out of Shay.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's played entirely for laughs.
Makes me laugh. I don't know why, but it makes me laugh, those two.
Yeah.
I mean, at first it's just Casey Affleck. He's the one that goes and... What's he say? His middle name is Peligroso. His middle name's Danger. And they have to send the con down there just to get him to get his shit together. And these two are only seen in these movies arguing, and then they come together for this one thing. It did make me laugh. But meanwhile, we're... go ahead.
Oh, well, the at this point we get Long Shot doesn't quite cover it, but in order to get all 11 people in the movie in one shot, we have to sort of stand at the other side of a swimming pool to get everyone in frame.
Sure.
I don't know. It doesn't... I get the need to do it. You've got to have that shot at some point in the movie. But it doesn't help with the distance you're already feeling from the characters. Even with those kind of Altman-esque zooms.
Yeah.
That was, you know, the sort of... he does a lot of it in... Altman does it in all his films, but, you know, Nashville especially, I remember. Kind of... You have this long, wide shot where all the action's there, and then you zoom into little parts of it. And he kind of does that in this scene. It still feels very sort of like I'm not invested in what's going on because I'm watching it from the woods,
from
seemingly.
forever away. Yeah, I know what you're saying, but as I was watching this movie, I was thinking of another movie that I know we've both seen recently, and that's the latest Ghostbusters.
Well, yeah,
and that film doesn't have as many people as this movie does, and yet that movie feels bloated with character in a way that this movie doesn't. So to me, I think yeah, you might notice it in a scene like that, but I think Soderbergh's pretty careful about what he chooses to show us, what he chooses to shot, and how he edits it in a way in which you don't feel like this movie is bursting at the seams, and you should.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's packed, you know? By the time we add Andy Garcia back in, right now we're about to
Vince
have the Night Fox back in. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, this movie should feel like 1,000-pound weight. And it doesn't, actually. So
No.
I give him credit.
No, it doesn't. Okay. I buy that completely. Speaking of Andy Garcia, we get the classic impasse of the villain becoming the hero.
Well...
Or at the very least, an anti-hero.
Yeah. He's joining the crew. But...
He's
under
so
terms
like
and conditions.
Under terms and conditions. Yeah, so we've got... It's kind of a double impasse because you've got a legacy character and a role reversal at the same time.
Right.
He's actually... And his presence in the movie is what makes this a heist movie as opposed to a compelled bankruptcy movie. I don't know. There's probably a catchier way of putting it than that, but...
Right.
That's...
He wants the diamonds.
Yeah, exactly. He wants the diamonds, and so part of the deal, the terms and conditions are that they get the diamonds, which is the only currently impossible part of the plan.
And so they have to make the impossible possible.
Until that becomes possible.
Yeah. That was the other thing for this movie. The other thing for this movie, though, is that we're told several times that some things are just flat out impossible.
Yeah.
And they become fairly easily possible.
They do, yes. With the help, again, using exactly the same device as last time, is that, you know, a Damon relative bails them out.
Yeah.
Except this time it's Bob Einstein.
Right.
An actor who's kind of pretty close to, again, that original, you know, more in the late 60s when he was doing the Rowan and Martin and Smothers Brothers, but
how far away since
he's still
this
off
is
that area?
Yeah, how far away since this is the first time you saw it did you see that coming? I mean, when he picks up the phone, Ellen Barkin calls him, he picks up the phone. Do you already know, or?
Well, I was just like, you know, hey, there's Marty Funkhauser.
Yeah.
So it didn't. No, I didn't creep up on me. I didn't think they'd do it. They do the same
bit
gag twice, essentially, but. I should have listened to Andy Garcia.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what this movie's all about.
Well, he suggests that they rob him, you know, that they do it again, and it's Basher that says, we already did that once. You don't want to do the same thing again. And yet they're doing the same thing again in their movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where we get the scene that we both don't like, which is where they walk around talking about their relationships rather than having a woman in the movie to represent those relationships.
Right.
Which is a little bit like saying, hey, honey, men are talking. About you.
Sit there and look pretty.
You know, they're again, I think that the nostalgia for old Vegas is clear here. They keep saying the town's changed, and the idea that Ruben's health is declining and he represents old Vegas.
Right.
It's almost like a eulogy for the in the same way that Scorsese's Casino was. This is also like a eulogy for old Vegas. Yeah. I think.
But meanwhile, he's not so sick in his coma that he can't get up and start reading the letters that Basher is, you know, that's all a little bit muddled too, you know. Exactly how
stuff.
Sick and what his illness is and, you know, that kind of thing.
True. Yeah. I mean, you kind of think he's on his deathbed until he isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Until he's very much not on his deathbed.
Yeah, right. Till he's got his cape and his cane.
And there's this scene that I thought was very unusual. I know it has something of a payoff at the end, where Danny's watching... Is it Danny who's watching Oprah, or is it Rusty who's watching Oprah? I can't remember.
Danny's watching, and Rusty comes in.
Yeah, comes in.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, we're feminizing men rather than having actual women in the movie. Anything not to have women in this movie.
I think it was something about what was she doing? Building schools or something? And
Well, yeah.
yeah,
And obviously it's laying pipe for the ending of the movie, but,
Sure.
but nonetheless, yeah, it's a strange. It was a strange scene, even in context. It still
Right.
feels like a little bit of a strange scene. Probably my favorite part of the movie, and this will come as no surprise given what I've been saying about my attraction to the boring details of storytelling rather than the flashy surfaces.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really into this dice making process.
Me too. Yeah.
I could probably watch an entire documentary about how dice are made.
Yes.
That's really what I want this movie to be. Once the possibilities presented to me.
Yeah, especially when you want to get some weighted dice from the factory to,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just funny that by the time we get to opening night, after this very soft opening of the casino where it's open for weeks and weeks and weeks, but then we have opening night.
Yeah.
And like literally the truck from Mexico rolls up at 4 p.m. and out it comes, get rid of these dice. We got the new dice, It's
Yeah.
a lot of what they're counting on to work feels more happenstance and
Sure.
like stuff they couldn't actually predict.
Completely, yeah. But I was just lost in the manufacturing process of these because I never thought about it before. This movie made me think about that.
When the little
Like, yeah,
tube
how do
comes out with a little square
that's
gel,
it. It's all about
yeah.
the little. And for a moment, the dice look like
Starburst or like I don't know.
yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like some
yeah.
kind of jelly
There's a-
candy.
There's a British, I suspect, European candy called Munchies, which are like I think they're slightly jellified, but they have chocolate on the outside, and the dice look just like look like a munchie. not like the movie, not like the Gremlins.
Not the
ripoff,
munchies. Yes.
We're the Munchies.
Oh man.
But anyway, I was really taken with that, and I wanted to see as much of it as possible in as much detail as possible.
Now, what do you think about
Yeah.
Andy Garcia becoming a part of this team? And I think the big laugh they're looking for is I have to admit I kind of like it when Danny says, "Are you ready?" And he gives him that I think they're shooting into a mirror.
Yeah.
And he says, "I was born ready." He's like, "Yeah, you got it." He like walks off and he rolls his eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Because that's a little bit meta in the sense of a movie like this might always have that line, but
yes.
Danny and Rusty and the team are too cool for that kind of shit. You know?
Mhm.
I like that.
Or the other meta part of it is it's a Godfather 3 reunion.
Yeah, too. True.
Yeah, Pacino and Garcia.
Garcia.
And you wouldn't know from their respective performances in this movie.
No, yeah, right.
What their performances were like in Godfather 3. You would not get the sense that Garcia was the grounded, restrained performance of the two. Because he's actually judging the movie he's in. I mean, just to take the Godfather meta quality to its
Conclusion?
extremes.
Oh, okay.
In this movie, you've got Michael Corleone, you've got James Caan Sonny's
Yeah.
fictional son, and James Caan Sonny's real life son,
Right.
all in the movie. This is more Godfather 3 than Godfather 3.
That's great.
There's a moment in here which I'm really glad we cut away from, because I didn't like where it was going, acting or writing wise, where Al Pacino starts fondling a gold phone, and we cut away really quickly, and I'm like, great, I don't want to know any more about what he's gonna do with this phone at this point.
But what's great is that when he gets that gold phone, there's a card in there from
Yeah.
Ellen Barkin, and I like that. I thought it was interesting that we could even get character but basically because of Soderbergh. Soderbergh makes the choice for him to rip that card in half
Yeah.
halfway between being done with it. And it's this heartfelt card about how much Ellen Barkin's character appreciates
He just
all the
flings it
trust.
away.
He just like, it's like it's a moment for Pacino to be a broader Pacino, but he doesn't have to say anything.
Wait, and he doesn't take it. He doesn't. You
Yeah.
know, it's like if he was Heat Pacino, he'd have ripped it up. He'd have eaten it. He'd have spat it out onto the window. Here he just tosses it away. Literally throws it away.
That's great.
And he gets his own in these scenes. Again, the casino comparison is really interesting because he was obviously jealous of his screen rival De Niro's in Casino television show from the movie Casino.
Yeah, right.
Because he appears on the TV in his own like in-room show. And I just thought it's like so weird that both he and De Niro have been in movies about casinos where they both have a TV show in the casino.
Yeah, right.
Only. Like how niche is that?
Well, then I also started to get Bad News Bears in Japan vibes because we have a sumo match.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting. Like the movie will tell you that this is a kind of an innovative top of the line casino, and maybe this is intentional, but it doesn't seem like they've really got like a USP for this casino. There's basically anything that's going on in Vegas,
right?
You can get at this one casino. I don't quite understand. I guess that's the point as well. It's like it might have failed on its own, is what I'm saying, without the intervention of the Ocean's 11 crew. So, and I hadn't made the obvious connection about Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12. Is Andy Garcia make it Ocean's 13? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Eddie Izzard, and Andy Garcia
12,
make
yeah.
it 13. And I assume...
What about the Night Fox?
Well, he's not part of the team. As far as the Night Fox is concerned, he doesn't think that they've even seen him until he shows up on that helicopter pad.
I think we disagree about that.
What?
I think we disagree. At least I don't know. At least in the context of this movie, I guess he is working on his own. Yes.
Yeah, he's working with Garcia, Tom.
He's working with Garcia, but in the last... Anyway, I'm not going back to... We had that argument.
I know, we had that argument, but you're still wrong.
Yeah. But if Garcia's working for the team, isn't he also working for the team? I don't know.
No, Garcia's playing the double con. He thinks
he is.
He thinks he's working for them and against them. But they know he's working against them.
Ugh. Twist for the sake of twists. This pheromone bit would seem dated in a 60s movie, I think.
The Gilroy?
Where...
Because that's also...
like she's
that's a writer.
To his...
That's a Tony Gilroy reference.
Did Tony Gilroy write for this movie?
I can't remember if he wrote for the original movie or not, but... Or if he just worked with Clooney before or something. Something like that.
Yeah. Oh, on Michael Clayton.
I was going to say Michael Clayton.
Yeah. So it's all very... Like, the pheromone thing, it's just very strange. Like... It's like I Dream of Jeannie or something. It's like a, like an unused storyline from Bewitched. Or really strange for a movie of this era to sort of fall back on that. And I wonder if they think that they can just go very cheesy because, again, this movie was like a 1960s premise. So
yeah, it gives
throwback.
When you think about it, it gives kind of a Bill Cosby vibe that's not good.
That too,
Yeah.
Aside from the fact, but I mean, everything that Matt Damon is subjecting Ellen Barkin to is pretty horrific in these scenes. But it's also from a storytelling point of view, it's weak. It's weak and offensive. I like his fake nose though.
Good.
I do. I like because I think that's poking fun at Hollywood prosthetics.
Mm-hmm.
Which would make sense because it's not that long after the Hours with Nicole Kidman and her fake nose. And fake noses became kind of de rigueur for a while in Hollywood, and I think that's what they're sending up here.
Well, based on the Furiosa trailer, it's back. So
I gotta say though, credit to George Miller. That fake nose really changes that man's entire face.
it does, doesn't it?
I'm not gonna say who it is because I don't want to spoil it for you who haven't seen the trailer. But it takes a very recognizable person making him look unrecognizable through through a fake nose. Yeah, I mean, and it predicts Hollywood prosthetics just getting out of control, which is exactly what's happened.
Sure.
You can't do a single drama now, like a single biopic now without slapping on a fat suit.
Yeah, right.
In the golden age of biopics, nobody cared that the people looked like who they were supposed to be or not. You just bought into it, or you didn't.
Right. You just rolled the dice on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This is where Don Cheadle uses his, I don't know his real accent, but an accent closer to his, where he pretends to be sort of Southern American, right? Is that what happens in
when he's the Evel Knievel?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's more meta layers of us knowing that, and you're right, they did it in the last movie as well, but more meta layers of, we know it's Don Cheadle putting on an accent, and now he's doing an accent that's closer to his, but in world he's putting the accent on.
Yeah. I liked it better in the last movie when he
was coaching her.
Yeah, that to me is funnier.
Dialect coaching. Well, that's, I mean, that, the idea of him dialect coaching anyone is hilarious. But it's kind of like the way it's done here is like McNulty in The Wire, when he's
I love that when he does the Baltimore
from Baltimore.
Yeah,
he does the Baltimore pretending to be British.
Yeah. That's right. I was thinking of season 5 when he goes for the different Baltimore accent when he's trying to be the
that too.
Yeah.
No spoilers. Although the big spoiler is that season was a pile of shit, and you should stop watching in season 4.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's a pile of shit, but it's certainly the weakest of the 4 seasons.
Oof. Yeah. Speaking about sacrificing drama for metatextuality, that's what The Wire did in its final season.
That's not what we're here for, Tom. All right.
It's not. No, it's not. It's not. Well, we're talking about metatextuality at least. And I think that the twists and the fake outs in this movie are kind of weak because it feels very scattershot. It's just like whenever we get to a narrative impasse,
Mm-hmm.
we introduce a Deus Ex Machina of some kind.
Yeah.
A way that they can get out of trouble. And then the movie then tells us this is what they did all along, but we just haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So it's not good storytelling. There's a way to really do that kind of storytelling that's more invested and doesn't like reverse engineer quite as much.
Yeah, I think after the first 2 movies, to me, this movie felt like, again, it just felt a little lazy. Like the movie was saying to the audience, listen, you know what we're going to do. So, for some of this, you're going to have to wait a little longer. But for some of this, we'll present a problem and fix that problem 10 minutes later.
Interesting. Yeah, like actually kind of making a virtue of that.
Yeah.
Like this is what you want, this is what you're used to.
Right. That's what it feels like to me in this movie.
The burden is no longer on us to explain to you why it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Somewhere around minute 40, we're going to send a guy to a Mexican factory. At some point around minute 57, you're going to find out that we need $36,000 total to raise the pay level of every employee in the factory. Yeah. Problem solved.
Exactly. Well, solved is generous.
Solved for the
Problem
team.
Addressed.
Solved
Problem
for Ocean's
addressed.
11.
Problem mentioned.
Right. All right, why don't we take one more break?
Problem mentioned is a problem solved. Yeah, absolutely. Because we're getting deep into the unseating of the casino.
Yeah. It's time.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
It is.
We'll do that, everyone, and we'll be right back. If you like podcasts like I do, boy, do I have a treat for you. You need to
Stay on target.
and check out the Sounds in Cinema podcast. Listen as your host, sound designer and music creator Tony Parham, and co-host, musical performer and sound lover Derek Hansen, D-Rock if you're nasty, and I am, discuss all things sound related to film, television, stage, and theatrical productions. They discuss environmental sounds, bioacoustics, dialogue, the nature of communication through sound, but as an added bonus, they drink beer and try to
Stay on target.
find them wherever you get your podcasts and listen to the pure mania of a man who can charitably be described as Doug, the dog from Up, and another man with a soothing and sultry voice trying to get that man to
Stay on target.
That's the Sounds in Cinema podcast. Tune in and listen to the sounds they are creating just for you. We're back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're finishing up with Ocean's 13, a 2007 film directed by Steven Soderbergh. Yeah, I can see your, as we're talking about it, I can see your lack of patience for this film, I think.
How so? I have the most patience for this.
That's not a way to tell story, and this is not good, and that's bad, but obviously this movie has problems, and its lack of women is a huge problem.
It is, yeah.
But I do still think it's just an easy breezy ride,
There are a lot of incidental pleasures, which I feel like the other two movies don't have, so I kind of feel about all the Ocean sequels kind of the same, but this is at the top because it has more of those incidental pleasures for me.
Mm-hmm.
Here and there.
All right.
One of them being Al Pacino not being able to fly wings during the earthquake. It's an inspired piece of acting, which only goes to substantiate my Sylvester the Cat theory. Because I'm pretty sure that's what Sylvester does when he, walks off a ledge without realizing that there's air beneath him. He does a little pretending to fly.
Right.
So that's a great bit of acting. I love the use of, and I can't believe that this is the only time I've seen it in a movie, and I thought I came up with it, but turns out that a movie has done it. During the crap scene, I think we see graphics of all the scores on the screen.
Oh yeah. Like
we see their winnings kind of
total,
growing.
like here and there for this
total.
and that. Yeah.
And when I was writing a adaptation of Moonraker, that's what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to have graphics on the screen, kind of showing what was happening during the game. Because it's the book goes into in a lot of detail about that, but and I thought well, I've never seen this in a movie before. Now I've seen it in a movie, so I thought it was a good choice. It was a good use of graphics.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it also, what's interesting is for this particular heist, both the team, or not both, but the team and all the civilians are able to crack the bank, because Willie Bank is his name, so they get to crack the bank together, and that's part of the plan. Is it's not just the team; it's the fucking of him, and so they're gonna let everybody.
There's no way a man who's christened Willie Bank doesn't grow up to become an asshole. There's just no way, is there? I guess that's what this movie's telling us. That he's really his motivation is his name.
Yeah, but there's like a lot going on at once. I mean, we mentioned the gold phone, but what magnetron, is that what it is? They turn the gold phone into a magnetron.
Which magnetron is just Q's magnetized slot token from Diamonds Are Forever. Really is. That's the level we're working at. Which is not to say it's bad. I'm just saying it's been done better. Do you remember that scene from Diamonds Are Forever where Q is putting he's pulling the slots with a magnet on his hand and drawing out the coins?
I do not remember Diamonds Are Forever like you remember Diamonds Are Forever, sir.
Scarred by it, I am scarred.
But I do remember, like somewhere around here, we're also getting the Malloy boys pushing out the VUP out of their room. You mentioned that Basher is dressed up like Evel Knievel, and that's because Bank is about to... It's so funny that Bank is about to get the picture of Danny Ocean, who he's already struck a deal with to bring the whales into the hotel.
Yeah.
But then he's also going to get the picture of everybody else as the known accomplices.
Yeah.
But some of whom they just see walking around with Ocean anyway. I don't know. It just seemed weird.
Yeah.
But Livingston has been arrested. This is the kind of thing where, like, that's a perfect moment where, in the last movie, people get arrested and the audience for a while thinks, uh-oh. And in this movie, he gets arrested. He gets into a patrol car. He smiles. And the next thing we see is Eddie Izzard come in as his replacement. It's like a problem has happened and that problem is solved 60 seconds later.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Sure.
And so, then Casey Affleck has to do the computer wrangling.
Mm-hmm.
Although I do think it's funny because there's that one, I can't remember, I think it's his brother that says, "Are you in yet?" And he says, "I hate that question." That's pretty funny.
That's good. That's very funny. It's interesting to me. This movie came out a year too early because I think this movie, if it had come out in 2008, it could have been the poster movie of the anti-bank movement.
Mm-hmm.
Because the casino is all about the bank. The casino's called The Bank, and it's all about taking down the bank.
Right.
So I feel like if this came out a year later, following the market crash,
Sure.
where blanks are where banks are the whipping boys of popular culture.
Yeah.
This movie might have had a better chance of resonating with people.
Mm-hmm. I just remember too because, I mean, off topic. Well, back to the previous topic about, "Are you in yet?" And he says, "I hate that question." Like, there's a lot of dialogue in this movie. Like, blink and you miss the jokes because that's a good joke. But I think right after that, Scott Conn says, "I give you an olive basket and you spit in my face." And Casey Affleck says, "Was that your face?" That's all good fun stuff. But it's like, like the movie's moving at such a pace at this point that
Yeah.
I assume you were
I
getting a
appreciate
glass
that.
of water
Yeah.
or some chips.
I appreciate that. This is all happening in real time in one set piece. I think that's how you should do any heist in any movie.
Sure.
Or purposefully invert it like they do in Reservoir Dogs, for instance. And fun stuff. You've also got, I think, Bob Einstein scores some big laughs here in these scenes.
Absolutely.
With Ellen Barkin. And we at least where I am, there's a shot of Pacino where he looks like, where the red light and his center parting makes it look like he has devil horns, which I wondered whether that was a
Devil's Advocate reference, yeah.
But it's all leading towards the Clooney Sinatra payoff.
Yeah.
Right.
The casual stroll out the building up to Willie Bank.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is their real tribute to the stars of the original, that this is the real reason we're doing this, because you spoke badly about Frank Sinatra. That's what brought this down upon you.
That's
and the meta quality of, because Clooney is the nephew of Rosemary Clooney, who was part of that the music industry at the same time as Sinatra. So it does feel like like a kind of dynasty almost of entertainers that is being represented in a scene like this. As you put it, that they were tentative about referencing the '60 original in the previous two films. Another way of looking at it is like they don't seem to be ill at ease in this movie, at least, with living in the shadow of the original. Like they seem to have come to terms with the fact that rather than trying to outdo the original, we should kind of meet it on its own terms a little bit. We should embrace and celebrate that era and
Well,
those
even
stars.
yeah, I don't know. Even in our ranking episode, you referenced this movie as a lateral move. But I mean, are you saying that that's the best a sequel can do? Is make a lateral move?
No, it's the best this series can do.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant. Yeah.
It's the safest because I think all of these sequels are on shaky ground conceptually as to what they're gonna do with an original that they're already twice removed from.
Right.
I think the safest move, albeit the laziest and perhaps the least inventive, is to do what they do here, and that's why I think this overall works better than the other two movies.
Okay, that's fine.
Which is not to say that we're Ocean's 12 and Ocean's 8 better movies. I would be happy to extol their virtues as movies that try to do something different. It's just I don't think they stick the landing with what they're trying to do.
All right, fine.
But normally I would argue against this kind of complacent sequel filmmaking.
You have to wait 20 years and then watch them again. That's what I did.
Apparently so, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And the other payoff is the Oprah scene, which is you haven't realized has been set up, but
Yeah, right.
they donate the proceeds of the diamonds in
Well,
Andy
wait. I mean,
Garcia's
you're
name to a
jumping
charity.
forward a little bit.
Yeah, I probably am. Yeah,
I
If
mean,
you got anything? In
I
between,
assume you're
go
ready
ahead.
to be done, but
No, that's where my notes went. So if you've
yeah,
got
I mean,
something
well,
before that,
you
go
already
for it.
mentioned the bit about Linus is with Ellen Barkin and Super Dave and that kind of thing, but I just think it's interesting that in this movie where con upon con upon con and trickery and shenanigans are afoot.
Do you mean con or con?
Yeah,
Because this movie is also con
it's
upon
got
con.
it's
upon
also
con.
got con upon con. You're
It's
right.
got real cons and fictional cons.
But when they get to the top of that, helicopter tower, and then of course there's Vincent Castle,
Yeah.
blown out in yellow and red parachute jumping gear. But I found it. I always remember thinking it's interesting that, yeah, we've seen him in the movie before.
Yeah.
But he's in this whole movie until the last 5 minutes before he even says a word. You know what I mean?
Right.
They do. It's like they take great pains to bring him back, but he's barely in it.
What if that's the case? Like, wouldn't it have worked better if we didn't know it was going to be him?
Yeah, right.
Like, why do we need to see him earlier in the movie? Why would they spoil the surprise?
To me, I think the idea is, the gang doesn't know. I think they're going for the last, but it's just the cheap thing that they always do, where they're going to retell us the thing about, well, you were
half this
following
team
us, we
doesn't
were
know what's-
following him.
Half this team doesn't even know what's going on in their own team. Like in every one of these movies. So it doesn't make any sense to me. I suppose as well that so you're supposed to go, he was there all along.
Yeah,
By
right.
which we mean we saw him about an hour ago.
I like the button on that scene when Linus has to hand over the diamonds, and so he does. And then he looks at him like he's really disappointed in Vincent Castle. He goes, "A gun?" Like,
Yes.
I do like that moment. He throws it to him and it clips it. It doesn't
Yeah.
even have a clip in it. I kind of like
Yeah.
that. I like that there's a thief's code among them, kind of a thing.
Matt Damon saves these two movies from an acting standpoint. I think.
Yeah, he's great.
And he's really good in these two movies. Better than he normally is. And I think he's good. I just mean, I don't know, something about his performance. Occasionally that'll happen with Matt Damon. There'll be a performance that I'll really respond to. And then other performances where I'll be like, yeah, it's, Team America's Matt Damon. And then like True Grit, the Coen Brothers True Grit.
Yeah.
which I hate. I think it's the worst Coen Brothers movie by a mile. But
Sure.
Matt Damon is superb in that.
Yeah.
As the Texas Ranger. Like, he completely owns the movie. Over some really big hitters as well.
Did you see the most recent one? Not the most recent, I don't think. But what's it called? Stillwater? The one where he's the dad and it's like he's looking for his daughter that was possibly kidnapped in another country.
So much so that I thought that was Mark Ruffalo. Didn't Mark Ruffalo do a very similar movie recently to that?
No, but I think you're thinking of Dark Water. I think you're just thinking of titles now.
No, not just that. There's a movie where he's going around and some company has poisoned the water somewhere.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Is that called Dark Water?
I think so. It's
I thought
about...
that was a Hideo Nakata film called Dark Water as well, but that's not the same.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I have that title right. I hope so. I don't know.
No,
but
I
essentially
think
it's
you're
about
right.
how
Yeah. Okay.
non-stick
So-
coating is basically giving all of us cancer.
Classically, I am working back from the title once again, as I am known to do in my pitches.
Anyway, my overall point was he, kind of plays a schlub and just a kind of a local guy from the South, but he really embodies that character.
Yeah.
I thought he was really good in that movie.
He's got some, I think we're in an era where I feel like some very good actors are forced to take movies that are beneath them just to keep working.
Mm.
And not in a way that leads to anything interesting like it used to do in the Star System.
Right.
where you're like, this really shouldn't be Tyrone Power playing this role, but I dig it. So anyway.
I'm sorry he missed his Oscar speech to be in Jaws for the Revenge, but I'm glad Michael Caine's in Jaws for the Revenge.
Exactly, yeah. Speaking of which, I watching Pacino in this movie made me think about his Oscars moment this year, where everyone naturally assumed he'd forgotten to recap all the Best Picture options before his people came out and said no, that was the choice of the producers.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I don't know if I'm 100% convinced that he didn't just forget. That seems totally on brand. A previous year, he fell asleep while he was given the nominations. In the 70s, he was on Quaaludes when he was at the Oscars and spent the entire ceremony in fear that he would win.
Yeah.
And go up there and not be able to achieve the power of speech.
I think you're right that it's possible he could have forgotten, but then it would have been a mistake because the entire Oscars, the announcers weren't announcing it. They would say, and the nominees are, and then it would go to a screen and kind of flash up, and a different voice would.
What I wouldn't give for Al Pacino to act out each of the Best Picture movies.
All right, let's get back to our movie. We're right at the end. You mentioned the Oprah scene. That's because Danny, whatever he got from, I guess, the diamonds, he donated to a charity on Terry Benedict's behalf.
Yeah.
I do like
and
the
I gotta
line.
Say,
I like the lines. Do you think that's funny? He goes, well, Terry, it sure as hell ain't sad. And walks out the door.
That's good. That sounds like a Sinatra or a Martin line.
Yeah.
I also love, the mucked up footage of the way Andy Garcia plays being a guest on Oprah.
It's very funny, isn't it?
It's remarkably plausible.
Yeah.
Like, he changes his entire way of being to adjust to being like a talk show guest, which is, is a missing part of a lot of actors' brains, where they're like, they'll do this playing it exactly the same. But he realizes, it's like, no, people are different when they're guests on TV shows. So
well, what I also
play this
like
totally
is
differently.
there's the double effect of he's lying. He didn't want to donate
Yeah.
this money, but he's
Yeah.
taking the credit for, like, you know what I mean? So
But he
there's that.
seems so sincere.
Yeah, he seems so sincere and genuine. He's going to take it for as much as he can get as Terry Benedict, which I like.
And you know it's going to go over big with Oprah's audience.
Exactly.
Because he's sat bait, isn't he? Like, he's the sat bait guest.
Yeah. Yeah, meanwhile, Rusty and Danny and Linus are all waiting to go back to, well, two of them are waiting to go back to their wives that aren't in the movie. And as previously discussed, Linus says, I'll see you when I see you, because he's like a full-fledged...
Yeah.
So much so his dad has got a part for him in a con.
Yeah.
That was very big. It was very surprised to the boys, you know?
I totally buy Matt Damon as Bob Einstein's son, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would have never have thought of it in abstract, but when you see them together, you're like, yeah, that works.
Yeah, sure.
That's right.
And then they just got to give the VUP his money, and we're off to credits.
Yeah, and this airport goodbye feels like a farewell to the series for me.
Yeah.
It
did feel like they were done.
The trio of, I really it's about Pitt and Clooney, but Damon is a big enough star by this point,
Sure.
where they effectively work as a trio, at least in the billing sense.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of the note of tension between them seems to kind of speak to the idea of, like, the egos of these three men having to be together in a movie. Like, it's all there, it's all kind of it's all sort of implied in the tone of the scene. And so it seems to be very much like, well, this is it. We did what we did.
Right.
Now we go off and do our other movies.
Yeah,
separately.
right.
But we've got one payoff, which is the David Paymer.
That's what I'm saying. The VUP, David Paymer.
The VUP, yes, indeed, yes. That's a great payoff. I like that they add a level of comic. I like that they remember him.
Yeah, right.
And, it adds a level of karmic balance because, it's easy to forget that these guys are criminals and that they're ruining people's lives.
Right, exactly. I know, right.
So you kind of need this buyback, right? To like them to right to the end of the movie, because if they use this guy as a total patsy and ruined his health and his career and his reputation,
and they bring it up earlier in the movie too. I can't remember. I think it's Don Cheadle. I think it's Basher that says something about ruining this poor guy's life, and it's Carl Reiner that says he gets the Susan B. Anthony at the airport at the end.
Ah, that's a Susan B. Anthony.
Big coins, Tom. See, you got to just know a little bit, right? Just a little bit. You put a coin in a slot.
Whoa!
I'm not saying you don't. I'm saying, like, all the
I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about. It's like, so Susan B. the coins are bigger, so they...
Yeah, it's like that size.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that means you're more likely to get a
no, it just means they're gonna get that guy rich by using a coin. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's code.
Yeah.
Which apparently you understand without having it translated for you. Which is why you love these movies. It all makes sense.
The Billy
now.
Martin. Come on.
Billy Martin. Okay, yeah. So, but that was a good. Again, one of the incidental pleasures I liked.
All right.
Of the movie.
Credit check us.
Yeah. So the character named Font in the credits is either a very close reproduction of the Pink Panther titles, or it just is the Pink Panther titles.
You're right.
A name I was interested to see, given all that I've said about the Mametian twists. Consultant Ricky J. Do you know this guy, Ricky J?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So for the listener, Ricky J is a well-known associate of David Mamet. He's in a lot of his films. He's a magician. So he's often a kind of magic / con artist consultant for.
I actually have a book called, I think it's just called Dice.
Yeah.
And it's pictures of dice from Ricky J's collection
Huh.
But they actually decompose dice if you keep them long enough, those old dice.
Oh.
And it's various stages of eroded dice. It's a cool book. I found it in the
Well,
Museum
who
of
you're
Jurassic
talking to.
Technology in Los Angeles.
You
So
think I
figured
don't
it would
know
appeal
that that's a
to
cool
you.
book? That sounds like the best book I've ever heard of. Ruins of Dice?
Yeah.
That's amazing. But it kind of
It's
makes
good.
sense that so much of this movie is about sleight of hand and
Yeah, right.
narrative twists. And apparently, or maybe he's the dice consultant specifically.
Could be.
If he's a collector.
We both like the dice.
Catering by 4 Stars Catering, and that's 4 FOR, not FOUR, which I
Okay.
feel like it's a way to make people laugh while tacitly admitting that you cannot boast a 4-star rating for your company. The music for this movie was recorded in Ocean Way Recording Studio, which is either named after the movie, a huge coincidence, or some kind of a lucky charm. So there you go. That's the end of my credit check.
That's it? Oh, quick.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about 12 and 13. It doesn't seem like you're budging.
I'm more responsive to the idea that this is lazier filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
I think my overall lack of respect for the series means that it doesn't really matter that it's the least interesting idea for a sequel.
Yeah, you said at the outset that you don't like fun. And Ocean's
this isn't
12 Ocean
That's why I like it.
Hey. Ocean's 12 notwithstanding, I think most people think of this series as quite fun. So I'm not sure you're on the pulse of America, but you're on the...
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
I'm not even on the pulse of Britain. I don't even have a pulse. I don't know how you're
Welcome.
talking to me. I don't know how I'm
Welcome.
speaking right now.
No wonder we're good partners. And yet, I can find a pulse within these movies. What can I tell you? They have so many problems, but at the end of the day, I think they're just easy, fun watches.
I wanted them to be easier and funner.
Well, I'm curious what you'll think of Ocean's 11 now. I'm holding out hope for that one, Tom.
Which one?
The Clooney one.
Okay. And I guess we should say that we've finally disappeared up our own asses because we're doing a crossover with our own podcast this month.
Right.
We decided that given that the Ocean's movies, at least one of them is about to leave a streaming service at the end of the month, that for the first time ever, we're going to be covering the entire series in the
Immediately.
in the same time frame. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you sign up for our Patreon, you'll be able to hear episodes on both the 1960 Ocean's 11 and the 2001 Ocean's 11.
It's a ploy. We're trying to get more.
Yeah. The
Trying to get
completists.
more Patreons.
Yeah, it was the real OCD out there who realize that completion is in sight,
Yeah.
and they can get it by signing up for a 7-day free trial to our Patreon. And
Well-
hopefully forgetting to cancel that.
Yes, that's what we're hoping for. Well, everyone, you're going to have to tell us what you think of the original Ocean series. Of course, we still have one movie to go, Ocean's 8. But as of now, you're going to have to tell us what you think of Ocean's 13. Yay or nay? Fan or no fan? Find us on Facebook. Find us on Instagram. Don't worry about finding us somewhere else. Fuck that guy. You can send an email to everythingsequal@gmail.com. His name is Tom Stewart. He's from Lonesome Whistle Productions. My name is Michael Shantz. I'm from the How Dare You Awards. Like I said, when you hear us next, it's Ocean's 8. Another movie people either love or hate, I think. All right. Look forward to that. Say goodbye to everybody, Tom.
seducing women of a certain age.
Oh, God! Don't ever try to impersonate Bob Einstein. After
That's
you've
not
just done
easy,
a 2-hour
friend.
Just after you've done a 2-hour podcast episode. My God!
Let me just get right through it.
Why don't you get yourself a lozenge and we'll try and press on.
A woman's concerned about her opening.
For what?
Her opening.
All right, I'm done.
That's great. We'll be back next time, everyone. Thanks for listening.